they want to change the way people think. And the deeper levels of thought which you instill in people, the more powerful it's going to be. And the most powerful type of thought coercion is the type that the subject doesn't realize. And so, I mean, that should be evidence alone. These companies aren't irrational. They're not just putting this money out there for fun. They could be spending it on a fourth yacht or a fifth yacht or something.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not supposed to be obviously off-putting to the audience. It's supposed to be kind of subversive and convincing in some fashion. I mean, yeah, and people I think everyone knows this internally, but doesn't always think of it as like what you're seeing on television is super fake. It's super fake. It's not like how people really are and really think and really speak. And like I said, people I think have internalized that, but I think they mistake it oftentimes too, especially considering how much media we consume. I'm assuming that at least some gets through, in some way. And I kind of also noticed this between, say, like small generational gaps, where I know students that are younger than me sort of have adopted some ideas and talk certain ways. And there's like the small little gaps that I notice just by, say, like, I know that we view different medias. And so even when I'm thinking of, say, like serious medias, like, say, even like our news or whatever it is that the hobbies we have or the interests we have and the type of messages that those groups send, people are shaped certainly by what they're consuming. And some people are more or less susceptible to it, but it's not 0 or 100%. I think it's definitely, people are, typically, who knows, like 25 to 75% pretty commonly, right, between those margins.
Yeah, and I think the important point there is that every one of us, to restate, is to some degree adopting values built into the messages we consume and base our concept of ourselves on those messages and take criticisms of those alleged facts as criticisms of ourselves. And naturally, human beings are very defensive of criticisms towards themselves. So given all of that talk about how we think it's important for cultural groups to be empowered and not to be disempowered externally in order to be politically disempowered, I want to look at a couple cases which I think might help to illuminate this phenomenon of propaganda. Okay, so take the Christian right in America. Now, they are obviously against the teaching of evolution because if you're teaching that, you're accepting their core beliefs of reality to be false. But I think if we look at this group and look at the way they treat facts, they clearly take it to be an assault on their entire culture if someone wants to teach evolution, which is going to lead to that. That's not just a disagreement on facts. That's a war against their being. And it makes a lot of sense that Bill O'Reilly's book was called Culture Wars, or one of his books, if he has other ones. I mean, I didn't read that one, but I saw it. And to sort of further that example, it's also why this same group frequently refers to Obama as a Muslim. I remember the first time I heard my father say this, because I think I'm a case of probably the apple falling very, very far from the tree. The first time I heard him say this, I asked him, I said, "Do you really believe that Obama is a Muslim?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know." And I knew he didn't. That'd be such a far-fetched and bizarre conspiracy if this Muslim was pretending to be a Christian for many years and somehow hiding all the evidence. But I thought about it for a long time. I wanted to know why, family members of mine and a large percent of the country was calling Obama a Muslim. And the whole idea is that he's not one of them, since he's a liberal and all. He's whatever his views are, it's an attack on their views. And so are Muslims. Muslims aren't Christians. And I think the Christian right tends to perceive Islam as anti-Christian, which I don't think it necessarily is. In fact, I'm certain that it isn't necessarily. It's that Obama is a liberal, so he is an enemy to us and our culture. And, we think that the same thing about Muslims, so we're going to call him a Muslim. So it's doing the same thing. It's taking a disagreement about facts and turning it into this kind of culture war And so what they did is just added a different culture that they consider themselves to be at war with to try to, I guess, reaffirm to each other. I guess this functions to them as evidence that he's one of them, not one of us. And the pervasiveness of something that's so clearly false, I think, is pretty telling. The ability of people, when they have adopted a view, not as a view of a fact, but instead a view of themselves and their being and their culture and their friends and family, as opposed to some external outsider enemies, their ability to suspend judgment, or not suspend judgment, to suspend rationality and common sense, and to hold on to these bizarre, spooky views. And now, I mean, I picked up the Christian right, and I guess I picked them out a lot, but I think every cultural group has phenomena like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was, just as you were talking, I was thinking of equivalents, say, on the kind of, maybe Brian and I might call it like pseudo-liberal, almost like a fan base, because like, I don't even know if I'd call it a culture. It's more of like something that's been like packaged and sold to people, is sort of like
bandwagon liberalism.
Yeah, like kind of a bandwagon liberalism, right? And actually, I was thinking of examples in my head that I could bring up, but then I realized one that's the most hilarious to me, which is probably not even a true one, but I think anyone who's seen lots of Will Ferrell movies has noticed that he has lots of scenes in his movies where white families who are well off like get together and sing really corny hymns or popular songs among like white suburban neighborhoods or something. Have you noticed this, where like there's like the family gets together and like once someone's playing the hymn or the popular like melody of some song and everyone's like singing along with it as like this like trained chorus?
Well, actually I haven't seen those movies, but I'm from a family that does that.
Oh my gosh. So it was like this, for anyone that's not getting the joke, it's like prissy liberal whites who are boxed into certain ways of thinking or behaving and stuff. And it's actually, I get a kick out of it when it's made fun of in popular culture, even though I'm white. I actually really get a kick out of uppity white culture when it's made fun of by like any comedian or movie or something.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of like people singing church hymns at home or whatever, because kind of. I've certainly done that. But I see what you're talking about. And that's a group that when I was young, I did not like liberalism or Democrats, because that's what I perceived as it. And I think I get that this is your point, that this is another plastic culture group. And this is the one that the people that would call Obama a Muslim that we were talking about, I think those are what they think of as liberalism. These people who've bought into this pre-packaged life with these like nice suburban houses, who buy into the messages on TV. And yeah, that is hateable.
I think it like sort of makes people feel like more legitimate when they have, it's like, okay, well, I can definitely point out what's so bad about this packaged culture, like plastic culture. And so like my plastic culture is not the plastic culture, it's the right one, and that's the plastic one, even though they might be both plastic.
Right.
So one group would be rationalizing it as, say, maybe I have the most dominant culture, so I'm rationalizing it that way, whereas the disempowered culture is saying maybe I'm trying to empower myself against the dominant culture. And so that way I'm rationalizing it in that fashion. And then how do we even know whether or not we're even acting rationally in the first place? And that is probably the tough question, actually.
Oh, I don't think it is knowable. I think no one could know.
Yeah, not in any way that, say, the deepest skeptic would be convinced, although we would find ways to internally rationalize it, I think.
So, yeah. So like you're saying, when I was young, like when I was a young teen and I was just starting to like recognize a lot of patterns in the beliefs I saw people having, I thought like the suburbanite people that I was surrounded by were the plastic culture, and that whatever one I was the one that wasn't a plastic culture and hadn't adopted the values instilled in it by mass media propaganda. And of course, later I became convinced that was completely false, and that at that time, I think I had more beliefs built into my thinking from external groups that I identified myself with than I do now, hopefully.
Yeah, and people do that for a long time. It's kind of like admitting you're wrong when I guess you say want to like fit in and identify differently. So if you don't want to do that, it's similar to like feeling like, oh, I don't want to be wrong about an issue. Not that, and again, yet again, I'm not trying to convince people to like say like abandon everything they know or believe or whatever. It's just that people can be really, even when they've given up being stubborn, they're also just afraid to say give up a process